was Kwame Kilpatrick of Detroit.
He said, all things good of this earth flow into
my pockets
because of the city's greatness. Were we not great once? Can we not be great again?
I feel that this city is going to explode. I am talking guns. I am talking corruption. It all began with
text messages.
This is an incident that will not go away, not as long as I am mayor of this city.
You asked it around your country around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elrick, and I have to start the show with a little disclaimer because I'm not really big on milestones. I don't celebrate my birthday or anything like that, and I didn't want to mark the 15th anniversary of the text message scandal, but Shawn insisted. As you know, Shawn cannot get enough of the Kwame Kilpatrick story, so Marc, I hope the bell is ready and well rested. This episode, we're talking about Kwame Kilpatrick, 15th anniversary of the text messages, but not because it's the 15th anniversary, but because Kwame Kilpatrick has been claiming that he is a changed man, that he is KK 2.0. And so we are joined today by someone who knows almost as much about Mr. Kilpatrick as I do.
I knew you were going to say that, and I was hoping you wouldn't, but that's okay.
Mr. Shawn Windsor. No, Shawn doesn't know anything about Kilpatrick because it's relevant, interesting news. He just knows about
your glasses. That was the big topic on Shawn's mind.
No, I like the intro, by the way. The first few notes I thought were Aliens, and then I realized it was Shawshank Redemption, but then you had Al Pacino, so it was a nice mix.
Hoo-ah.
It was City Hall.
A movie no one has heard of or seen.
Yes, a John Cusack star vehicle in which he gets to test out his big, easy accent because he's a graduate of Tulane Law who goes to advise the mayor of, I think, New York, who's caught up in some sort of scandal, none of which is relevant. So we're going to get right to Marc Chutko, former federal prosecutor, assistant U.S. attorney, who was one of the leaders of the efforts to bring Mr. Kilpatrick to justice. So Marc is kind enough to join us today to talk about the real Kwame Kilpatrick, which surprisingly is not the same as the real Kwame Kilpatrick that the real Kwame Kilpatrick claims is the real Kwame Kilpatrick. And if that doesn't make sense, I suggest you send a text message to Marc Fellhauer, who can make sense of it all, because that's what he does here for us.
Okay. Then I'll delete it.
Oh. Well,
thanks for coming in, Marc.
I hope
I'm just getting to our guest.
Yeah, I hope they're reaching you on SkyTel. And all of this is brought to you by Luke Nowacki and by David Hall of Hall Financial. Two men, two businesses who can help you not only succeed financially in the present, but prepare for financial success in the future. We're going to be telling you a little bit about them after we hear about the real Kwame Kilpatrick, which, by the way, led to my return to Fox 2. This is the second time this year I appeared on Fox 2, so we'll play a little bit of that for you. That's probably about as much of me as Fox 2 wants in any given year, but it was great to be back on the air talking about a subject we know so well. Last call, by the way, for Clark Park. If you want to support Clark Park and the kids of Southwest Detroit, we will have a link on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com, to our Patronicity fundraiser where you can make a donation. And if you make a donation, you will be invited to an exclusive whiskey tasting in Eastern Market. If you give, I will give you the details on how to join us there. It's a great time for a great cause. And the other way to support the show and good causes is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is ML Soul of Detroit. We do tend to stop the live broadcast before we get to room 7609. So if you're listening at home and you're listening exclusively to us, you will find a special feature this month on room 7609 that we will talk about a little later in the show. So, Marc, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
We're not joined by Kwame Kilpatrick. I don't know how to reach him now, but I imagine if I had a lot of money to give somebody, he would find me.
He's probably going to be listening, so
I hope
get some note from him.
Yeah, no, I hope so. If we do encourage people to donate to the show, I don't think that's why he's listening. He's more on the receiving end of the donor recipient continuum. But he says he's a changed man, and that's one of the things that I find really hard to believe. You reviewed the federal filings. How is it that he says he's a new man?
I don't know. The filing didn't seem to represent the guy that I knew. And just like you, I read all of his text messages, probably 300,000 text messages total. So I really got a feel for who he was. And, he claims that he's become a new man, that he's been introspective in prison, but seems like the same guy that entered prison 8 years ago. So, he really hit the jackpot when President Trump released him, commuted his sentence at the end of his administration. And you would have thought that he would have been thankful and quiet and just hoped that everyone would go away and just leave him alone so he could start his new life. But it doesn't seem to be the case. The jackpot wasn't enough for him, so he wanted to reduce his term of supervised release. And, when you look at the filing itself, it seems that his request is really a pretext for something else. So he's saying that he had restrictions on his travel, and that was why he needed to reduce his supervised release, because he couldn't travel out of Georgia. But in fact, his probation officer was granting every request for travel that he made, so that it didn't seem like that was something that was really hindering his ability to lead his life. And
that's interesting. It seems like he would want to travel for another grift. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like you might be getting to here. Another way to separate people from their money.
Yeah, well, he certainly wanted to travel to Florida because that was where he had started some Kickstarter account to get a new home in the Orlando area that was supposedly a gated community, and started that effort until he realized that the federal government wanted its money back. And
is he brazen or is he stupid? Did he think people weren't going to catch on to that or see that? Did he think the courts weren't going to see that?
I don't know. I mean, he just keeps on pushing and pushing until he gets his way. We've seen politicians do that in the past, and that seems to be his modus operandi. So here, I think that, pretextually, he said that it was his restrictions on travel that was the reason to reduce the supervised release. But I think it really had to do with money, because with him, it always has to do with money. Yeah. I mean, here with a supervised release, he had the federal government poking in on his finances, and that's not good for him. I mean, he wasn't able to continue his Kickstarter collection for his new house, and so you can bet your bottom dollar that a year from now, once supervised release is over, that Kickstarter account will be funded again.
Yeah, there's a pattern here, and I think what he does is he pushes as hard as he can until somebody checks him, and he's owed the city of Detroit almost $1 million for 15 years, and the Wayne County prosecutor seems to have made very little effort whatsoever to try and recoup that money. Now, after he was convicted of multiple counts of public corruption in 2013, the feds put a restitution order on him. I think the SEC's after him too, the IRS, and of course there's what he owes for the corruption from the City Hall criminal enterprise. And he was pretty much didn't have to make any payments because he was behind bars. Once he gets out, he starts trying to make some money, and I think he presumed that the feds would be just as derelict as the Wayne County prosecutor or whoever handles restitution for Wayne County. But Marc's successor in the public corruption unit, David Gardy, and some of those folks, they get pretty angry when somebody owes the public a lot of money and pretends that they don't, and then gets out of a gated community that we were paying for, and then wants to move into another gated community and expects us to pay for it. Well, it's one thing if the first gated community is prison. It's another thing if the second one is some posh digs in Orlando that is probably nicer than anybody he left back home in Detroit can call home. It's just, I mean, he says he's a changed man, but I've seen no evidence of it. I mean, you've read the text messages. What could possibly be different about this man?
Yeah, I go back to your case when you got the text messages and sort of spurred the Wayne County prosecution, and we followed that whistleblower trial involving Gary Brown and Harold Nelthrop very closely, and throughout the whole thing, he not only denied that he had had an affair, but also denied that he had fired Gary Brown. And lo and behold, there's a text message that says to Christine Beatty, "Remember when we fired Gary Brown?" And, I think to this day, if you were to ask him if he fired Gary Brown, he would say no. I mean, the text messages don't lie. They basically were, his thoughts from his brain to his thumbs to sending it to his colleagues. And they basically formed the basis for the federal prosecution, too. And, we went through 6 months of trial. We had 24 of 30 counts of conviction beyond a reasonable doubt by perhaps the most diverse federal jury that the Eastern District has ever known. And yet he's saying that none of it ever happened. I mean, he was there every single day, wearing a different suit every single day, by the way. I don't know how he had that many clothes for a 6-month trial.
I think he did recycle the burgundy velvet blazer, because I think I saw that more than once.
That was more than once? Yeah, I never really noticed it, but
it was very plush.
My colleague, Jen Blackwell, at one point pointed out about 3 months into the trial that he had not worn the same outfit twice. And, the rest of us who were public servants like him, I had 5 suits from Joseph A. Banks that, I cycled through each week, and I knew I had different ties maybe. But then I started watching. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. He really does have an endless supply of clothing. Where is he possibly purchasing that? Those are things that I think juries notice. They probably thought to themselves, I don't have that many clothes. How is it possible that a public servant does? But getting back to my point is that, he had an opportunity during that trial to contest the allegations against him. He sat there for 6 months watching the endless supply of audio tapes and text messages and witnesses and his own colleagues, administration officials, testify under oath. And when he had the opportunity to testify himself in his own self-defense, he declined.
Here's what I give him credit for, though. He knows the game is really played with the public, and that's why he can say, yeah, I admit to the adultery, because that's what most people are going to focus on. I mean, the public, they love sex, money, they love those kind of stories too, but it can get really complex as to what are RICO charges. I mean, that kind of goes over everybody's head. So he can go out there and say, yeah, I did this. Is 28 years worth it? I'm a new man. And I think he believes that people will accept that. The problem is he should know better that a court wouldn't accept that. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I don't know where he's coming from, where he only will acknowledge his philandering of his wife, because that wasn't anything to do with the trial that we had. We basically removed all that stuff. In fact, didn't want to pollute the jury by talking about any of that kind of information. So, it was established beyond any doubt that he had committed these crimes, and everyone knew it in the courtroom. ML, you were there. You knew it. He was the only one that didn't. You don't hear Bobby Ferguson going out there and claiming that he was innocent. I think he probably knows better than that. But Kwame Kilpatrick, for whatever reason, does not want to be looking like he was unfaithful to the city of Detroit. He was only unfaithful in his marriage, apparently.
Well, somebody did ask him what happened, what brought him down. Mark, we've got some sound from when he was on the Today Show talking about basically what he thought he was guilty of.
2008, it was revealed that my tremendous character flaw and lying and manipulating of my own wife and family with having an adulterous relationship was put out in the public. And I had to protect my family and my then wife. It was tough.
What a hero.
Yeah, no, he protected the family and the wife that he betrayed. But, the thing is, he's been playing this same note for all these years, thinking that people will forgive adultery, which, however you feel about that, that's up to you. My approach to covering these stories is screw whoever you want, just don't screw the taxpayers. But the truth of it is what Marc said a moment ago. He fired a cop who was doing his job. He ruined the careers of a couple of police officers who were among the best in the department, who were working hard to serve the people of Detroit. He did all kinds of things that had nothing to do with sex. That lawsuit, that whistleblower lawsuit, the reason why Gary Brown and Harold Nelthrop were awarded millions of dollars by a jury was because he destroyed their careers. They were whistleblowers trying to tell the authorities what was going on. And frankly, he was so dumb about it that Gary Brown would have taken his job back if he'd given it to him. If he'd put him in charge of the parking department, which he ended up being in charge of eventually, he would have said, just get me back on track to get my full pension, and we'll never talk about this. But this bravado, this feeling that come and get me, we're going to say and do whatever we want until somebody comes and gets us, that plays sometimes in the court of public opinion, but in the actual court, it doesn't go very far. And Judge Nancy Edmonds, who was the one who sentenced Mr. Kilpatrick to 28 years in prison, was very succinct and was to the point when she said, listen, you're out there saying that you're a new man. You've never admitted to what you did wrong. And we heard that on the Today Show as well.
Yeah, I got to say that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think we're going to, Mark, do you have that queued up?
I did the perjury, But all of this mail fraud, wire fraud, anybody conspiracies, absolutely not.
24 counts.
24 counts of federal charges.
And you still maintain that you were innocent of the overwhelming majority of those charges.
Absolutely.
That must piss you off because you gave the opening statement and you pointed out wire transfers, right? Isn't that the wire fraud?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we had his bank records. You could see all the piles of cash that he would put into his bank account, his credit card accounts, month by month as he
Does that anger you when you hear something like that? Or do you say that's this guy? He's just a criminal who won't admit to anything.
Yeah, he seems undeterrable, unfortunately.
Huh.
Yeah, no, he again, as he did with his text messages, testified against himself in this case. The judge said that Kilpatrick's own recent statements to the media belie the assertion that he unequivocally accepts responsibility for his criminal conduct. He says this in a sworn document. I accept responsibility. Here he is on the Today Show not even a year ago saying, I didn't do it. I mean, does he think that Judge Edmonds doesn't watch TV, that somebody who watches TV isn't going to call Judge Edmonds? Can you believe what this screwhead is saying on national TV now? I mean, it's just the man's... his wife divorced him, but he's divorced from reality.
To that point, how does it work? Did he know he was going to get Judge Edmonds, or is that just a roll of the dice?
It's a random draw.
So once that happened, he had to have known there was no way she was going to grant this.
Well, she did grant a compassionate release to Bobby Ferguson to try to even the scales there when
I'm sure
Kwame Kilpatrick was released.
But
I mean, that showed fairness on her part. She didn't have to do that, but she saw that Bobby Ferguson, the number 2 guy, serving 21 years in prison while because he didn't have that connection to Donald Trump, didn't seem fair to her in the scheme of things with Kwame Kilpatrick out and starting his new life in a gated community. So, she followed the law in terms of the COVID and some of the health problems that Bobby Ferguson claimed. But ultimately, I think some of it had to do with the fact that she was trying to be even-handed in the logic of the case and didn't want to see one guy serving a lot longer than the other.
Yeah, and the sentences, the minute Kilpatrick's released, the sentences are immediately disproportionate because Ferguson served more time than Kilpatrick, even though he got less time than Kilpatrick. So as we've said on this show, it just kind of, once they let Kilpatrick out, you should probably let Bobby out too. And Bobby, in talking to Teresa Baldus of the Free Press last week, showed the kind of grace that his co-defendant has never mustered when he basically said, I got no complaints about Judge Edmonds. She let me out early. She gave me back some of my life. I got to be grateful for that. I mean, that seems to me to be an appropriate response as to, no, I've changed. Give me money. I want to be able to travel freely, even though you let me travel freely. I admit to everything, even though I don't admit to anything. I mean, I didn't realize that this just popped up on Edmonds' desk. I mean, that may be where Kilpatrick's luck is starting to change, because who knows this case better than her in the federal courthouse? I just assume she got it because she handles all Kilpatrick-related matters.
No, it did go to her because it was originally her case.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was wondering how that worked.
Yeah, but when I was preparing for the trial in the Kilpatrick case, I read his autobiography. It was called "Surrender: The Rise, the Fall, and the Redemption of Kwame Kilpatrick." And in there was just a complete lack of introspection. He blamed everybody else for his problems. He called Kim Worthy dastardly. He had choice words for you and the media and the business elites. And, it was everybody trying to stop him rather than really looking at himself and saying, what have I done to contribute to the problem here?
Well, and he has a new book. He claims he has no income whatsoever, but he was just in town a couple weeks ago for a book signing. So I assume he's not giving them away. There must be some money coming in there. On YouTube, CJ So Intelligent says, why would the SEC be after Kwame? And Mark, you may know, but my recollection is there was a pension case where he was giving away millions of dollars of retirees' money, and there were some fines as part of the resolution there that haven't been paid.
Right. Yeah. No. As the mayor of Detroit, he was an ex officio member, trustee of the both retirements, police and fire, and the general retirement system, and that was a complete pay-to-play system there. And SEC got wind of that, and they brought a case against him. I believe it was a default judgment that they ultimately was awarded. But yeah, he owes them money. He owes the IRS money. He owes the city of Detroit. So all of that is going to be very difficult to collect on the minute that this supervised release term is over in a year.
I mean, you were able to track down a lot of money, not just from transfers, but cash. I mean, you guys found cash. Do you suspect he still has money hidden somewhere, or did you think you found all of it and marked it all and know where it's at?
We always thought that there probably was money out there, but the fact that he has made some of his filings pro se and that, he ultimately didn't get attorneys, he wasn't paying attorneys all the time. And that made me think if he's fighting for his liberty and he's not getting the attorney of his choice, at least according to him, that maybe the cash has gone dry. I don't know. Or maybe he's got it squirreled away somewhere that he'll collect later when no one's looking.
Well, right. Why not end the supervised release? Because if you have to tell somebody, well, I need to go to the Caymans, somebody might say, well, I think we're going to follow you to the Caymans, and you go into some bank with an empty bag, and you come out with a bursting bag, like the vacuum cleaner bag that they smuggled money in way back when.
Malon Clift.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when he says he doesn't want anybody watching where he's going, it makes me wonder if he's trying to beat a path to the money because he needs the dough.
Yeah, that's actually a thought I hadn't had was with supervised release, he has to have a legitimate reason for his travel, and they're not going to let him go to the Bahamas or the Cayman Islands or somewhere else that you might have some lax banking.
Could he theoretically send someone, though? I mean, or would the feds track that?
No, that's true. I mean, that's what happened with Malon Clift. Bobby Ferguson, toward the end of the Kilpatrick administration, when everything was falling to pieces, basically gave $90,000 in cash to Malon Clift, a buddy of his from, I think it was college, and stood up in his wedding and just said, hey, look, you got to get this to Kwame. And he put it in his, I think it was in his vacuum cleaner for safekeeping, and then gave it to him in 2 tranches. But that would be the way to do it. And, frankly, in supervised release, it's not the same level of supervision. That you're just basically checking in with your probation officer once a month and make sure that you're not taking drugs or, committing bank robberies and things like that.
Wait, you're saying that is or is not? Like, what is his supervision like right now?
It's fairly lenient.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just basically a check-in. There's not a drone hovering over his house right now.
Just like there weren't black helicopters and news helicopters hovering over the Manoogian mansion or following his family everywhere it went, like he claimed. I mean,
but he has to get approval for travel, like we were
right.
About. Certain things, yeah.
Now, one of the things that has puzzled me is, in the end, the restitution that he was supposed to pay as part of the RICO case was somewhere in the millions of dollars, and now he only owes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the court has said he's only made $5,000 in payments. How do we go from millions to hundreds of thousands? Where did that couple million come from?
During the appellate process, he challenged some of the restitution award, and the government, we conceded at the time that he was right as to the kind of causal nexus between his actions and some of the losses. They're very difficult to show how the losses really transpire.
There's no formula, right? You have to kind of build a case for that too.
And then he and Bobby Ferguson were found jointly and severally liable for the restitution, and because a lot of money had been seized from Bobby Ferguson, a lot of that then was used to pay and satisfy the money judgment, and Kwame Kilpatrick benefited from that. So
once again, someone else paid for him.
Yes, even the money he says he's paid, he has not paid. It was taken by force, and it wasn't even his money.
Right. No, there was no voluntary surrender of money in this case, and certainly not by Kwame Kilpatrick.
How much is he supposed to be paying per month right now?
You know, I don't know what it is. It's pretty minimal, like $100 a month or so. So he's going to have still a tab owing.
And Bobby Ferguson's were that low. I would assume his would have been that low. Right. So to act like you can't pay that, it's first off, it's ludicrous that it's that low. Why is that? Why is it only $100? When
that's a good question. I haven't followed exactly why it was made that way. I mean, in some cases with defendants that don't have the financial resources or means, the concern is, hey, we want to get these people back out there and productive members of society if they've got this big weight on their shoulders.
Yeah, don't start them stealing banks again, so they can make the restitution payment on the bank robbery.
Oh yeah, because that's why they'd rob a bank. Yeah.
Well,
to pay restitution.
But I can guarantee you, a year from now, you are not going to be seeing more restitution payments by Kwame Kilpatrick. And the government can still try to go after that, get money judgments against him, but it doesn't seem like money judgments make much of a difference.
Can the IRS take money from him?
Yeah, they can garnish, his wages if he has legitimate wages. I don't know exactly how he declares his income right now.
Well, this is one of the things that I'd love to know. I mean, I imagine he's not making a fortune with these book signings. I'd be surprised if he made enough money selling books to cover his travel expenses. But he says he's a preacher, and I wonder who ordained him. I haven't seen anything about that, but it reminds me.
Did.
Yeah, well,
he ordained himself.
There was a laying out of hands, I guess, but
he's the chosen one. Remember?
It reminds me of when he was a teacher. And this was after he came back to Detroit from Florida A&M, where he claimed he had a teaching certificate, and he didn't. And I reported that, and that's one of the reasons why his folks went after me at Channel 4. But more on that another time. There was a provision at the time that when the school district was short of teachers, a substitute teacher could teach as a full-time teacher as long as they were working on their certification. So he got a job teaching, and by all accounts was a very good teacher, very good mentor, very good leader of young people. Next year, they needed teachers. He was still a substitute teacher, became a full-time teacher again. Same deal, supposed to be working on his certification. Never sends them what he's working on, never shows them he's making progress towards his certification. So the third year, Detroit Public Schools says, we can't let you teach anymore because you were supposed to be working on your certification. You haven't shown us that. You're not certified, and this program only allows you to do this for 2 years before we have to put the brakes on. And Kilpatrick sent a letter to these officials who were trying to make him follow their rule, their law, and said, my mother talked to the superintendent, and he said it would be okay. So I'd like to keep teaching. And I think then they said, no, I don't think so. And I wonder if that's the same thing that's happening here with his ordination. That I'm planning to be ordained, but in the meantime, I'm a preacher. I'm speaking the word, and you can see him on Instagram talking about Bible study and all these things. But it just seems like if there's no one holding that ruler up, holding that yardstick up, requiring him to prove the truth of what he says, he just hopes people will believe it, and some do.
Yeah, I don't know how many people are following or part of his flock. That'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, and I think he does preach at different churches.
I'd love to talk to those people.
Yeah, it seems to be an online ministry. I don't know. It's he's no Benny Hinn. I'll say that for him. Right. Anybody remember Benny Hinn?
No, it must be something from
with the amazing hair,
comb over,
big TV. Yeah, I mean,
there's Shawn. Hi, Shawn.
Fantastic coif.
Well, we got into your field of comb over,
So,
Yeah. Well, I don't have enough to comb over.
but
No. Sorry, I checked out. It's,
what? Hey, what? That's rude.
5 years ago, Patrick.
That's rude.
4 years. Sorry.
well, you know, the good people of Fox 2 thought it was a big enough story to put me back on the air.
Did you wear your Spartan jersey when you went on the air?
No, I wore my.
No, he had 2 pullover sweatshirts, which
I wore
was
my
weird
Detroit
looking.
Free Press fleece because I wanted to represent.
Over another fleece
Nice.
that zipped up.
Do you have a suit, by the way, for 6 months straight?
I have a fair number of suits, but I don't have enough for. But you know, the best suit story, actually, one of my favorite stories from the whole damn trial, was this guy who has so many suits he can change up every day. Had even more suits, but he left some of them behind in Dubai. Remember when you put a guy in the witness stand, John Rutherford? What did he testify to?
Yeah, John Rutherford was a
Not the guy from the Caju Cafe.
We called him the homeless shelter tycoon. He'd made a ton of money through the Wayne County Detroit Mental Health Authority with basically franchising homeless shelters, and he wanted to take that and parlay that into casinos and
Down by the riverfront.
yeah, lots of other bennies. And so he, as I recall, Kwame Kilpatrick was going to Dubai, needed some cash so that he could get some suits. He'd heard that they have a really great cloth there. So got $10,000 from Rutherford to go, and then he had brought it back, the swatches of this specialized cloth, to this guy named, I'm trying to remember his name now, Alabioso was his tailor, and he put that suits together for him. So there was actually some material, I think, that came back. He left some of it there as well. And ultimately, there was another guy that I think got the job constructing the Heilman Rec Center. He had to pay for the tailoring on that in order to get the rec center project.
What?
Yeah, and as I recall, I think Rutherford gave them $10,000 on the tarmac as they're getting ready to fly to Dubai. Kilpatrick is in Dubai, and there was
So he flew private, of course. How stupid of me for not thinking that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that,
If
but
it's on the tarmac.
yeah, well, yeah, Marc may recall those
Yeah,
details.
I don't remember the details on that.
He's so relatable to his constituents.
Exactly.
I see a lot of people in Detroit.
He's
do.
one of us. But when he gets to Dubai, there's a big meeting, and you know there's a big thing where getting together for a big event is sort of how you close the deal. Kilpatrick missed this event. The whole reason why local business people want him to go to Dubai, because he was getting fitted for the suits. And then when they leave Dubai, my recollection was they left the suits behind, but maybe they left some and brought some back.
Yeah, I'll have to dredge that back up again.
Yeah,
But no,
so
you
there
were right.
could have been more suits.
Right.
You know?
The delegation was waiting for him, and he never showed
Yeah,
the whole purpose of his going to Dubai.
And that reminds me of another story I heard from the mayor of Windsor, that after the Super Bowl, you know, that Kilpatrick went down to the Super Bowl with a big contingent to see how they did it in New Orleans so they could prepare for when the Super Bowl comes to Detroit. And there's a ceremony where the mayor of the city that just hosted hands off a ceremonial football to the mayor of the city that's going to host. And Roger Penske and all these guys in the host committee are waiting there for Kilpatrick to show up. Now, of course, he spent tons of money, brought Christine Beatty and all these people down there. And they're waiting for the handoff of the ceremonial football. And because they're billing Detroit Super Bowl as the international Super Bowl, Windsor and Detroit are the joint hosts, Kilpatrick never shows up. Eddie Francis, the mayor of Windsor, is standing there, and after a while, Penske or somebody gets sick of waiting for Kilpatrick and says, "You're a mayor, take the football." So they give the football to the mayor of Windsor, and they all get the hell out of there because they got sick of waiting for Kilpatrick, who, of course, never showed up because the party was over. And if the party's over, why the hell would you stay around to do your job?
Yeah, talking about delegations, I remember the large retinues that he would bring to like the U.S. Conference of Mayors. There was one in Dallas once, and they basically everyone's heads were turning because they thought he was a foreign head of state when he arrived in Dallas. And the mayor of Chicago at the time, Richard Daley, was there by himself wandering around, and then he just saw this phalanx of people from Detroit with wearing earpieces and all that kind of stuff, and they were like, "Oh my God, is there somebody from another country here?" But no, it was Detroit.
Yeah, and of course Duggan, whatever you think of him, drives himself, walks around without bodyguards, which I always felt like if you were trying to send a message to the world that Detroit is safe and you're a big guy, why do you need a bunch of cops walking around you? I mean, that's just, if you don't feel safe, then why the hell should I feel safe over on the east side? I mean,
you like to feel important.
Yeah, well,
really
a lot of it was about the show
status. Yeah.
Now, Marc, you said you looked at all the text messages.
I looked at all the text messages between Kwame Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson. I will say this, that we had a paralegal in the office. I didn't really want to look at any of the romance type things, and so I asked her to take a look at it, and she looked stricken at the end of the day after, looking through those things.
Eyes glaze.
Yeah. I just basically wanted to look at the financial transactions. I had no interest in anything else.
Well, the reason why I ask you is because this never dies, that there was a party at the Manoogian Mansion. Did you or anybody you worked with ever see anything in the text messages that indicated there was a party at the Manoogian Mansion, that a stripper was there, that a stripper was harmed, anything to suggest that?
I didn't see anything that proved that.
And your familiarity with the text messages and with the people involved, is it possible, is it conceivable, even in bizarro world, that they would have a crazy-ass party where some stripper got her ass beat and maybe killed and not mention one syllable about it in text messages?
I mean, it's possible, although I got to say that they mentioned a lot of other things in those text messages, so it didn't look like that they were being reticent to use that thing to kind of open up with their deepest secrets. At one point, I remember Kilpatrick said, I think it was at the beginning of his administration, that Mayor Coleman Young had been followed by the feds. They had wiretapped his phones, and but he didn't have to worry about that because he was using text pagers, and we're thinking, well, so that kind of suggests that he didn't realize that there was a technology to actually collect that stuff.
Yeah. So all of which is to say, and I'm no apologist for Kwame Kilpatrick. I think that's probably abundantly clear by now. But if you're going to come up to me and tell me that the Manoogian Mansion party really happened, please just bring one scintilla of evidence, because of all the stuff this guy did that he denies. This is the one thing he denies doing that he didn't do. So please, can we put the Manoogian Mansion party rumor to rest?
Going back to the case, and he's being charged with Bobby Ferguson and Bernard Kilpatrick. What was Bernard found guilty of?
He was found guilty of tax crimes. The jury hung, and I don't know what the vote count was, but they hung on the RICO charge against him, against Bernard Kilpatrick. So he ended up, I think, serving 15 months for tax crimes.
And how much money did he end up bringing in? Because he took bribes, correct?
Yeah, he was getting a lot of money from Rutherford,
cases of champagne,
Carl Cato. Yeah, I mean, he was one of those indispensable members of anyone who had to do business in the city.
Were you satisfied with how he was found and what he served?
Well, I definitely thought he was part of the conspiracy. The way he conducted himself the way he conducted himself at the trial, he sort of sat apart from Kilpatrick and Ferguson, who were just kind of yucking it up the whole time,
so
together.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think they thought they were going to get acquitted. They were shocked. I don't know if you were there, ML, when the verdict was read, but their jaws just dropped. I think that they figured that this was just a 6 months that they'd have to endure, and then they'd walk.
This is what I'm flummoxed about with Kwame Kilpatrick. I think he's a really smart guy, but he is just not self-aware at all. And it kind of goes back to him not accepting responsibility for what he did. I find it amazing that you could sit through that trial and be shocked that you're found guilty of so many counts. That's amazing to me. I don't know.
To me, when I think of Kwame Kilpatrick, I think of the guy who wears a Speedo to the beach. Everybody else knows you look like shit, and you're sitting there saying, if I had a little more oil, I could shine a little more.
But he's not dumb. I mean, you wouldn't characterize him as dumb, would you?
You know what
he's just a crook.
What I would say about Kwame Kilpatrick, and I guarantee if he was sitting with us right now, everybody would love him and hate us, because he's just got that magnetism. But we're not as dumb as he thinks we are. He's very smart. We're just not as dumb as he thinks we are. Or maybe he knows the deal. He's like, I only need 51% of these idiots, so the rest of you, whatever. Marc, I want to ask you before we let you go, and thanks for coming in. It's great to have you on the show. We've had Mike Bellotta, who also put in some yeoman's work on this conviction on the show before, so it's a real treat to have you on here, too. Was Kilpatrick offered a plea deal? And if so, can you tell us what it was?
Well, I don't know that I'm at liberty to say that. So.
Well, let me put it the other way, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding that everyone who is facing federal charges has to be offered some sort of resolution short of a trial. Is that right?
Well, that's standard practice. It's not a requirement. I would suggest that you talk to Jim Thomas or Kwame Kilpatrick for that matter, and maybe they can answer that question for you.
Well, Kilpatrick doesn't do any free appearances, so that's
You're
out.
such a lawyer.
But, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That one, I think I'll leave that for the defense lawyer to answer that question.
Okay. I will just tell you, my sense is that he was offered a deal, and he turned it down because he thought he was going to beat the rap. And I'll tell you, I think it was one of the very first counts that came back with a guilty plea. And I've often wondered, what would it be like to think they're going to read my name 30 times and say not guilty, and then hear guilty, and then say, there might be 29 more of these.
I don't know. Must not have been a good day for him, though.
That's why you don't commit those crimes.
That's why you wear the dark suit to court. Because no one can tell what happened below the waistband when you heard, that one's 20 years? Oh. Yeah, that's bad. That's bad. So Marc, thanks for coming in. I know you're working in private practice now, so hopefully you'll still find a way to serve the public through that work. But you've been involved in a lot of great cases, brought a lot of justice to this jurisdiction. There's a lot more to come. I know you're involved with Macomb County public corruption investigation that's wrapping up and some other stuff. So thanks, and you've left the office in some good hands. I think David Gardy there probably has a higher sense of moral outrage than I do, which means he's not going to let anybody slide, which is good to know.
He's a tough cookie.
Yeah, he's. I will just say that I follow the law because I'm afraid of guys like you guys.
What?
And I'm too pretty. If I got inside, it wouldn't last long.
I know you kind of wrapped it up, but I do want to ask one more question. What's next for him? I mean, when can he file this again to ask to be released? Because you said within a year you expect him.
I think he's done. I don't think he's going to appeal this. Well, he might. I suppose.
You never know.
He seems to push things.
When are we going to hear from him again? Besides, I mean, legally, not just asking for money.
I would guess he's going to keep quiet until he gets to that third year of supervised release where it ends, and then who knows? Maybe he'll be in the Cayman Islands.
Of course he will. Yeah, digging up some money, some cash left there.
Yeah.
Apparently. Well, maybe. Allegedly.
So my theory is Bobby, who I always thought was a lot shrewder than Kilpatrick, if there's any money hidden, Bobby knows where it is, and he's way too smart to tell Kilpatrick. He is way too smart. Plus, Bobby's got all that earth-moving equipment. He could dig that shit deep and bury it way down below.
But he's supervised, too, so.
Yeah.
Well, for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's gotta wait.
So stay tuned.
You know, before we let you go, let me
Bobby
just
was part of it, yeah.
Let me touch on that point real quick, because there's been a lot of talk about whether the sentence for Kilpatrick was extravagant. The 3 years of supervised release, that's fairly standard, right? So
yeah, that's the typical for any federal felony.
Okay, so whatever you think of the 28 years, the 3-year rip for supervision, that's de rigueur.
Yeah, and just keep in mind that Jimmy DeMora is still serving his 28-year sentence down in the former Cuyahoga County supervisor.
Yeah, who was the first guy to get 28-year sentence for public corruption, did a hell of a lot less than Kilpatrick did. For folks who want to make this racial, Jimmy DeMora, white guy, also much older than Kilpatrick, so a 28-year sentence is going to hit him a hell of a lot harder. He's also been trying to get released and seems to have some health problems as well that would arguably justify an early release, and Jimmy is still making license plates. So you want to talk about unfairness, we can talk about that all day, but don't leave Jimmy DeMora out of the equation, because if anybody's got a reason to bitch, it's old Jimmy D. And I'm happy to let him rot too, by the way. So I'm not suggesting he be turned loose.
Jimmy D.
Well, that's what he told me to call him. You know,
all right.
It's Jimmy D. Marc, thanks very much.
Yeah, great to be here.
And we look forward to having you back on again, maybe for the Can you wait till the 20th anniversary, Shawn, or you want to get him back?
Whenever he wants to come back.
Okay. All right. You got an open invitation and Shawn's blessing. So you don't do any better than that on this show.
Sounds good.
Okay.
See you then.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for coming.
If you do have a pile of money and you have a big financial decision coming up, maybe you're purchasing a new home, a new car, or something cosmetic, you got to know how that decision is going to affect your current and future financial goals. That's why we recommend Luke Nowacki and his team at Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. They can help you plan for all your financial goals, both today and well into the future. Give Luke a call. He's a good man. 248-663-4748 for a complimentary consultation to see if your plans do align with your goals.
And there's one thing about Luke that never changes, that when you call him, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
So Luke will set you up for the future today. But if you need some cash right away, David Hall's the man to call.
Exactly, yeah. Say you have a lot of debt, and you don't want to keep paying those high rates, because mortgage interest rates, on the other hand, they're the lowest they've been in about 4 or 5 months. And now the holidays are behind us. You have these bills coming in. It's time to consider consolidating your debt with a cash out refinance. You can use the equity that you have in your home to put yourself in a better financial situation. It's the most affordable way to eliminate debt. And right now you can get a free 5-minute mortgage review with Hall Financial. That's all it's going to take to see how much money you've gained in your home equity. And in most cases, you can actually access that money, like ML said, pretty quick, 2 weeks or less. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your current home or get this money out of your home, you need to call Hall Financial first, 866-CALL-HALL, or feel free to chat with them online at callhallfirst.com.
And if you need to contact Luke or David Hall, you can use the link on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. And when you let them know that you want to do business with them, let them know where you found out about them, because it helps them continue to support us, which helps us come back to you every week and bring great guests like Marc Chutko. And, Marc used to listen to the Drew and Mike show on WRAF. And, believe it or not, these guys listen to what's in the media, and sometimes they get ideas about how to, what to look for, because the audience and the hosts, sometimes, there's some common sense there that can help bring these miscreants to justice.
Such a sweetheart.
And I make it all about you. Sweetheart.
Don't sell yourself short. You've done a lot of good work on this too.
But the other way to support our show is to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, ML Soul of Detroit. We appreciate it. And you can always find out, if you hit the bell, you'll get an alert, so you'll always know when we're going to go live. And we have some great guests coming up later this month. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. That tends to be what the billionaires do, as we discussed last week on the show about the billionaires who are looking for millions, hundreds of millions in tax breaks from all of us, so that they can maybe do the projects that they say they're going to do.
Yeah,
so
wow.
We'll continue to stay on that. J.C. Reindell was on last week's show. If you missed it, please
By the way,
check it out.
He had a really good follow-up article today, because he attended the public hearing.
Last night, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So those are weekly, and somebody asked last week in our comments if I was going to go to the hearing or the public forum, whatever it was, last Tuesday, and I did. And it's very interesting. I had a chance to talk to some of the people from Olympia Entertainment and from the related companies, which is Stephen Ross's group. And they're like, yeah, no, we keep our promises. And if we don't do what we're supposed to do, we don't get the benefits. So let us do it, because if we come up short, you don't have to pay us, which is an interesting argument, except what ends up happening is, if you sign up for the tax credits and you have access to the property and you don't do anything with it, we can't give those credits to anybody else, and nobody else can come in and do that project. So I don't think hey, if we screw up, don't worry about it.
So rigged.
That ain't going to feed the bulldog on this one. You're going to have to come a little more correct on that. JC's been going to those hearings every Tuesday. There's going to be some votes coming up soon, and this will get to City Council in March. So we're going to have more to say about this on this show. You're going to read more about this in the Detroit Free Press, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. And we know you have opinions on this, so do not be shy.
And Shawn will have more to say after this.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So I try not to speak ill of the dead, and not just because I'm afraid they'll haunt me, But Carlotta Liebenstein.
Carlotta Liebenstein, okay.
Maybe
Where are you going with this?
Liebenstein was a German countess who made her transition in 1992. But when she left $400 million.
Have you seen? Okay, go ahead.
To Gunter III. Well, Gunter is no longer around. We're now up to Gunter VI, still living off Liebenstein loot. And now this whole thing has made itself into a documentary.
And I'm going to guess that you have not seen it yet.
I will tell you, I have not seen it.
I've seen all of it, and
I do want to see it because it seems amazing.
There are, see, I can't say anything because I don't want to ruin it, but there are two big twists in this.
Well, so let me tell you what I've read about this. That somehow
the name of the show is Gunther's Millions.
Gunther's Millions,
it's
yeah,
a four-part doc.
And the money is basically turned into really an employment program for a bunch of hustlers. But there's a porn angle in it too. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a sex. There's always, come on, you got a lot of money. There's always going to be a sex angle.
But it's
we
not.
Just talked about Kilpatrick.
It's
of course,
not.
There's going to be a sex angle when it comes to money.
Gunter's not in the porn, is he?
Well, I wouldn't. Oh boy, I don't want to ruin it. But
Okay,
I wouldn't. Believe it or not, I wouldn't categorize it as porn.
Is that just because what Brandon has shown you is
it's
changed your whole
sex gets involved, but it's not. It's not. God, it's really hard to talk. I don't want to ruin it because it's a really ridiculously fun documentary series to watch. It's so weird.
Is there a doggy style angle here? Is that where we're going or no?
Well, no, the dog is not involved in the sex.
Okay. Well, that also describes another form of coitus. It doesn't actually involve a dog.
I want you to watch it though this week so we can revisit.
Okay.
What you just said about the Countess.
Okay, Gunter's Millions. We'll have a full report next week. But for leaving $400 million to a dog, Countess Carlotta Liebenstein, you are ex post facto our Geek of the Week.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
So it's been great to hear from all the shoegazing fans out there. Who knew? So many people knew how to gaze a shoe. It's crazy. And we want to, or as Christopher Walker would say, it's crazy. We want to play more of your favorite shoegazing tunes in room 7609, but we're going to have to wait till March because it's Black History Month. And so we want to highlight some of the new wave bands that have been led by black performers or that consist entirely of black performers. That second category we're really searching on, so if you can help us, please send us something. In the meantime, here's the Fine Young Cannibals with a song that could have been written by Kwame Kilpatrick. I'm not the man I used to be.